It's the October international break. I'm bored without club football, and it's time for a state of the season address for Bayern Munich. Welcome everybody to the Always Bayern Chelsea show. My name's Danny. You just got me today. I'm the Bayern Munich fan. Typically, my buddy Jim's here talking about Chelsea too, but this is a special video episode edition where I'm just coming through here and giving you a rundown of Bayern Munich's season so far, their new coach, Vincent Kompany, all of his tactics, where Bayern kind of stands, where we think things are going to go, and I'm going to go through all the players on the squad and give individual rankings for each player as to how their season's gone so far. And then I'm going to list kind of where teams are at in the Bundesliga right now in the table and how things might shape up. So let's jump right in, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, of course, like the video. And if you're looking for more of a long-form podcast style, that's kind of what we usually do, where I talk about Bayern, Jim talks about Chelsea. And you can find us on the podcasting platforms as well, Apple and Spotify. Breaking news and all sorts of updates on the Twitter account at AlwaysBayChe. So give us a follow there too if that's something that you're into. All right, without further ado, let's talk about how Bayern Munich's doing so far this season. So right now at this point, like I said, we're in the October international break. I guess we got breaks in September and November too, so I shouldn't bucket this one is all of fall, but so at this point Bayern Munich has 6 wins and 2 draws and 1 loss, and they started the season out hot. Vincent Kompany has Bayern Munich playing a very exciting, aggressive style of football, which has honestly been a joy to watch. I've been enjoying watching the team a lot more than I did last year, and at the beginning of the season it was all systems go. I mean, right away from their first match, which was the DFB Pokal match against Ulm, Bayern looked great. Their attack looked super aggressive. They really took care of a lot of kind of mid-table teams. You know, they played Wolfsburg and Werder Bremen, and even Freiburg in the Bundesliga, who I rate a little bit higher. I think the Freiburg is a pretty solid squad. As well as Holstein Kiel and their kind of a bottom of the table squad. They were just promoted into the Bundesliga this year, as well as Bayern's first Champions League match, which was against Dinamo Zagreb, where they famously won 9-2, the most goals scored ever in a Champions League match. And so the season started off hot. There was 1 week there where they scored 20 goals in a single week, and Kompany was breaking a lot of records for first-time head coaches, starts of the season, all these things, And I was kind of thinking, okay, this is going well. We like how the team is playing. As I said, I'm very excited about the aggressive, brave style of ball that they're playing. But they hadn't yet faced that upper echelon of opponents where there was a handful of matches coming up. That started with Leverkusen in the Bundesliga, and then Villa in the Champions League, and then Frankfurt in the Bundesliga, and now after this break we have Stuttgart and then Barcelona. And so, going into these matches, there were some questions about the squad. There were certainly questions about how the defense would perform, how that backline would perform, specifically the center backs Upamecano and Kim, because last year we saw quite a bit of mistakes that they would make in big matches, and with this aggressive style that Kompany is playing, when mistakes are made, they're punished. So Bayern had these matches that were against tougher opponents, and they played a dominant style of football still, but they couldn't get the results they needed. So that brings up some questions. There was a 1-1 draw against Leverkusen where Bayern utterly dominated the match. Then they flew to Villa Park to play Aston Villa in the Champions League. Just looked flat. We're dealing with some injuries, sure, but they lost that one 0-1. Again, dominated possession of the ball for most of the match and lost. And then a similar story with Frankfurt in the Bundesliga again. Bayern maybe had their most dominating performance out of the 3 matches in that one in terms of, possession, chance creation, and they still drew that match. It was 3-3, kind of a shootout there at the end, because teams that really sit back in that low block and play out from the back and counter very effectively can expose these flaws in Bayern's defense and get away with, favorable results. So those are kind of the questions now that we have in this international break, and how do we fix that? How do we play against teams in a low block? How do we defend against the counter? How do we shore up that back line? And these are things that I'm sure Kompany's working on. So as it stands, Bayern sits in first place in the Bundesliga with 14 points. It's close right now. Leipzig's up there, Frankfurt's up there, and you have Leverkusen and Dortmund kind of looming around as well. In the Champions League, they have 1 win and 1 loss. Could be better. There's a lot more matches now with this new Champions League format, so we'll see how they kind of adjust to that and how things happen going forward. You would have liked to have 2 wins there, but you don't have to necessarily be too worried quite yet. And then they have their 1 DFB Pokal win as well. So now why don't we kind of go through all of the players and maybe talk about some of the more impactful ones or some of the more surprising ones and give out some player ratings. And one thing to mention too is this rating scale is going to be out of 10. It's a very subjective scale, so just bear with me. Hopefully, you'll get a little bit more out of the explanations than you will out of the numbers themselves. But I guess in my mind, a 5 is kind of just meh, and then anything above a 5 is showing some potential, showing some promise. Anything below 5 is pretty bad, and why are they even on this team is kind of what I would be thinking if somebody got less than a 5. So let's start with the keepers. We have Manuel Neuer. I'm giving him a 7 so far. I think he's had a good season. There's certainly been a few mistakes in key matches, but as I mentioned, this aggressive style of play, Neuer plays so far up anyways, and with his sweeper keeper ways that are extremely valuable and important to the team, it also, leaves you with that calculated risk where if there is a mistake, Bayern's going to pay for it, and there's certainly been a few of those. But nonetheless, I wouldn't want anybody else as my goalkeeper. Then, of course, the other 2 keepers I don't have ratings for because we haven't seen them very much so far. Daniel Peretz has been injured, and Sven Ulreich has played a little bit and been okay when he's played. He doesn't offer to Bayern what Neuer does, with the whole sweeper and high-up aggressive play. But he's done all right when his number's been called, and that's kind of what you're going to get from him. Moving on to defenders, we have a handful of injuries there, so there's a good amount of defenders that I can't really rate properly. That includes Hiroki Ito, who's been out for the entire season so far, Josef Stanisic as well. Buckman's been out. And then we also have Eric Dyer there, one of the center backs who really made a splash last year for Bayern Munich and played so much better than I think everybody thought he was going to. He has essentially seen 0 minutes on the pitch this year, a couple minutes here and there, but I don't have any information really to rate him off of, so he's not getting a rating. He just doesn't really fit in this Kompany system with this high line. Dyer doesn't really have the pace to kind of keep that up. And then we have Sacha Boey, who I'm giving a 6 out of 10. We haven't seen a lot out of him because he has been injured as well. That's kind of been a theme so far this season, and it's a little bit concerning. Who am I kidding? It's very concerning what injuries could do to this squad. So anyways, Sacha Boey got some minutes at right back there, and he looked all right. He definitely contributes to the attack, but the common theme that I'm seeing is the defense, is lacking in a lot of ways, and with somebody like Boey who plays so far up the pitch, interchanges with the wingers, there are just a lot of times where he can't get back on defense, in time, and the center backs are left completely exposed. So, it's going to be tough with him. I don't know if he's the kind of profile that we need. I don't know if he's necessarily ready for Bayern Munich yet, but I'm willing to give him some time and give him a chance. And next I have Rafa Guerreiro written down here as a 7. He is somebody who is a Swiss Army knife of a player. He plays left back. He's played in the midfield before on the left side and as a left winger, and right now he's had to play right back quite a bit as well, so I commend him for having that flexibility and being able to be solid at a lot of these positions. He hasn't been a superstar, that's for sure, but I think he's been solid, and just seeing what he can do and seeing what he can do in all the different positions he plays is something that's not easy. Next, we're gonna take a look here at Alphonso Davies, and he has a 7 for me this year. He was one of my biggest disappointments last year. Seeing how he played for Bayern, seemed very unenthused, uninterested, lackadaisical on the pitch. And this year, it's probably going to be his last year, as I said, with the squad. But he has looked a lot better, honestly. He has looked a lot more mature. He's not just relying on his pace to get him back to defend, which he kind of did last year and ended up getting burned quite a bit. This year, he just seems like he's playing so much better positionally, and, I'll take that Alphonso Davies. I don't even need necessarily the brilliant Alphonso Davies who can score wonder goals left and right. I just want him to be solid, and that's what he's been so far this year. And last but not least is the focal point of this Vincent Kompany defense, the center backs, Dayot Upamecano and Kim Min-jae. And I'm going to lump them together in this description because they play together as the center backs for pretty much every match, and their flaws are very similar and their strengths are very similar. So I'm giving both of them a 7. I kind of mentioned it in the intro to this video in the discussion of the team as a whole, but this defense is such a huge part of this team because they play so far up. The center backs play with the ball a lot, Kim and Upa. They distribute the ball and start attacks quite a bit in this team, but they also are the last line of defense, and they've also had their fair share of mistakes, both of them so far. So they're contributing to the team in good ways and bad ways, and it's yet to see really how their season is going to shape up with the two of them playing so much and playing so aggressively. I think it's time for Kompany to start thinking about rotating these two a little bit more. That's not to say I don't like them. I get, they're very good with the ball. Kim is very good with duels. Upamecano has great pace. And, a lot of the times when they make mistakes, they're left essentially out to dry. It's just them back there, and they don't have any other help against some of these incredible, offensive attackers like Ali Watkins for Villa and like Omar Marmoush on Frankfurt. So, they're doing what they can, but I think they need to be a little bit better to play this aggressively. Next up is the midfield, and, under Kompany, a lot of Bayern's play is so fluid that it's hard to tell who's actually a midfielder and who's not, versus on paper what people are categorized as. I'm going to stick to trying to talk about only the true midfielders in this. A lot of Bayern's attacking midfielders are, in my mind, attackers, but can be categorized as midfielders. I'm just going to stick with true midfielders here. So first up, Leon Goretzka. I don't have enough information to rate him. He's hardly played at all. He's somebody who should, unfortunately, in my opinion, because I like the guy, unlike a lot of people, I guess, he's someone who should look for a transfer in January because the club bosses have made it clear that he's not going to get any playing time, really at all, any meaningful minutes at least. Next, I want to talk about Konrad Laimer, and he, is somebody who is a midfielder, but so far for Bayern really has only seen playing time this season as the right back because of the injuries that I kind of mentioned before to our defenders. I'm giving him a 5. He just hasn't looked great. He's clearly out of position. He's oftentimes running for his life, and I like his profile as a midfielder, but unfortunately, he just really hasn't shown up as a right back for us this year so far. And then there's João Palhinha. I'm giving him a 7 because I think he's been solid when he's played. However, he hardly has played at all for Bayern this year, and he was one of those guys who Bayern made such a big splash for in the offseason, who they waited a year to get. I'm shocked he hasn't played as much, and when I say as much, I really mean he hasn't played at all, to be honest. He's gotten some, relatively meaningless minutes here and there. He started a match when Pavlovic was hurt too, but he's somebody who you almost thought would be a starter, but the other two guys that I'm going to talk about have done so well that Palhinha hasn't played much. He's probably taking more time to get acclimated to a new country, a new language, a new lifestyle. And also he's that, 6 holding midfielder, defensive midfielder profile that with this high line Kompany's playing and how much the midfield contributes to the offense, it's going to be tricky to get him in there. And next, Alexander Pavlovic, one of the bright stars on Bayern Munich, the bright young stars who made a splash last year and totally unexpectedly became almost a must-start player. It seems like every match he's been getting the call, and for the most part, he hasn't disappointed. There's been a few matches, I think, where I would have liked to see Palhinha. I would have liked to see more defense, and Pavlovic has looked a little bit tired. But for the most part, the way he controls the game, the way he makes passes and finds players, and honestly just plays mature and smart, much wiser than his age, I really don't have any complaints about him. I'm giving him an 8. I can't even remember if I said that already, but he's been great, and he had my favorite goal this season, which was the goal against Leverkusen. And next, honestly, the man who might be Bayern's best player so far this season, there's a couple guys who I would put in that tier, and Joshua Kimmich is certainly one of them. He's back in the midfield, despite what a lot of the haters, including Thomas Tuchel, would say about that. He's been just dynamite. Consistently, I think he's the best player on our team in these matches. He's really thriving in this system under Kompany. He has a lot of freedom to kind of drift around to that right side and float up and down the pitch. But it also seems like he's always in the right place at the right time. The way he facilitates and the way he services the attackers is, it's everything you want. And now let's move on here to the attacking group, which I have classified, a lot of these attacking midfielders as. So this is the largest group I got. And there's still some guys who I don't have enough information this year yet to rate. We got Iran Kunda and Ibrahimovic. Youngsters, Ibrahimovic was injured, and, these guys haven't seen any minutes yet. And then we also have Tell and Zane, who I really want to see get more minutes at this point. I think it's crucial, especially for this attacking group and all these extra matches, really, with the international break and the more Champions League matches. I think rotation is so crucial this year, and so I need to see Sane and Tell get more minutes. They've been all right when they've played. Clearly, neither of them are in a rhythm yet, so, I shouldn't say no information, but not enough information to rate. And then Thomas Muller. He has hardly got any minutes either, which is frustrating to me. I'm not one of these guys who thinks he has to start every match. I don't think he should play 90 minutes necessarily all that often, but I do think there are matches that are perfect for Thomas Muller to play and to disrupt the defense and to, use his creative style of play and kind of break down things. I think that these teams that play a low block that Bayern struggles with, I think Muller is a perfect candidate to play those kinds of matches, at least, get some significant minutes in. Frankfurt, for example, he did start that one with Musiala being injured, and he, contributed on the score sheet with an assist, almost had a goal at the end. The beginning of the year when we were playing weaker opponents, Muller looked awesome. He has 6 goals and assists so far, but the match against Villa, the match against Leverkusen, he didn't play, and like I said, I think he would have been good in those kinds of matches, at least to change things up a little bit, when Bayern's attack was clearly struggling. I'm giving Muller an 8.5. And then we got Kingsley Coman. One of the biggest disappointments for me so far this year has been Kingsley Coman. It's clear that his time at Bayern Munich has run its course, And that's sad to say because he has contributed so much for the club. I don't want to diminish anything he has contributed. You know, he had the Champions League winning goal and had seasons there where he was just a key piece of this offense. That being said, I do think it's time for him to move on. It seems like it's time. It seems like the club wants to move on, I should say. He's getting a 5 for me. You know, he's played a lot. He's played more minutes than I think he should have so far when you have guys like Tell and Sané who aren't playing much at all, and Muller too. But, you know, it's clear to me that Coman still has that initial burst, that ability to get past the defense. But unfortunately, once he does that this year so far, his passing hasn't been great, his shooting hasn't been great, his crossing hasn't been great. So with this overflow of attacking players that Bayern has, I don't see a need to play Kingsley Coman very much. And then you got Serge Gnabry, and if you would have asked me to rate Serge maybe after the first 6 matches, I would have said a 9 or a 10, damn near perfect. But the last maybe 3 matches or so for Bayern, it's clear that he's needed a rest. Kompany's just been calling his number all the time, and I'm going to keep stressing it. Rotation for some of these guys on this attack. Serge is one of those guys. I'm worried that he's going to start getting injured again, but the last couple matches he's kind of slowed down a bit. So overall, I'm giving Serge a 7.5. I think he's had an incredible season for the most part up until the last few. As I said, I think he looked like a rejuvenated version of himself. I think he fits very, very well in this Kompany attack. And for somebody who was going to get sold, I think he made a good case to stay on the squad. And then we got Jamal Musiala. I'm giving him an 8.5. You know, Bayern's looking to extend his contract, rightfully so. I think they're going to really give him the keys to the city. I think he's going to get whatever he wants, and yeah, probably rightfully so. I mean, he's looked good. He's so creative. You know, there's been a few down matches for him, sure, this year, but overall, he's just an essential part of this Bayern attack. He has had some moments where he maybe puts his head down and dribbles a little bit too much, but yeah, goals, assists, everything. Musiala's been great. And next, I want to talk about Michael Olise, who is up there with, you know, the best players on the squad, I think, this year. I'm giving him a 9. You know, Michael Olise, another big splash, another big acquisition that Bayern brought in this summer, and he certainly has rejuvenated this attacking group. The man has 9 goals and assists so far this season across all competitions, and yeah, he just seems like he can do it all. He can create for himself. He can create for others, get goals, get assists. I hope he stays healthy. I'm looking forward to the rest of the season with Olise. I feel like I say it every episode on this podcast show, but the link up between Kane and Olise is so smooth. And now let's talk about Harry Kane. He's getting an 8.5 from me. You know, Kane is doing what Kane does, and he scores a lot of goals. He gets a lot of assists. He is the focal point of this attack, and, you know, rightfully so. Kane has an interesting style of play where he floats back often and kind of interchanges with other attackers, interchanges with the 10 a lot, and really provides assists and facilitates for this offense. And that's all well and good. I like when Kane does that, but at the end of the day, he also has to be in the box when there are opportunities to score, because Kane is the best goal scorer in the world. And I think I need to see him in the box getting serviced a little bit more than I do, so that's maybe where he's losing out on a point or two. But he still has 15 goals and assists across all competitions, and, you know, he's right up there with all the best players in the world. Harry Kane is Harry Kane. So where does this put us overall? I think I'm going to give Kompany/Bayern overall a 7.5 so far this season. I talked about it at the jump, you know, at the start of this episode, but their attack is exciting. It's fun. It's a breath of fresh air after last season. Their defense, I still have questions about. And I think we need to see the defense play a little bit better if Bayern's going to go far in a lot of these competitions that they're in. So if we want to rewind to the beginning of the season, Jim, my Chelsea-loving co-host, and I did an episode before the season started where we made some predictions. I predicted Bayern to win the Bundesliga this year, and I'm going to stick with that. I think that they have what it takes to win the Bundesliga, especially against a lot of these lower table and mid-table teams. I think they should, if they stay healthy, just rack up goals against these teams, and the defensive flaws maybe won't matter quite as much against the powerhouses, the Leverkusens, the Frankfurts, the Leipzigs. I think Bayern will, the Dortmunds, sorry, Dortmund fans, I think that Bayern will have enough to, do what they need to do against those teams and pick up enough points to win the league. I think that so far, the Frankfurt match, the Leverkusen match, I think that Bayern did get a little bit unlucky against those teams. We'll see, I could be wrong. As the season goes on, I think we'll get more information on that and we'll be able to tell more. I'm going to talk a little bit more about these other Bundesliga teams at the end of the episode, so stick around for that if you kind of want to hear a state of the season for the Bundesliga as a whole. When it comes to the DFB Pokal, I'm a little bit more optimistic than I was at the beginning of the season. I do think Bayern can win that competition. But, I predicted them to have another surprising exit, and I wouldn't be shocked if that happened as well. We'll see, if Bayern stays healthy, I think they got a damn good shot to win it. And then the Champions League. My prediction at the beginning of the season was a loss in the Champions League to Real Madrid, wherever we play them. Right now, I don't know if Bayern is where they need to be to win that competition, so I think they'll be able to get through to the quarters. I think they're going to get through to the quarterfinals. But unless the draw is very favorable for them, I think they are going to get bounced in the quarters. So that's kind of where I'm at right now for the Champions League. But yeah, overall, there's a lot to be excited for about this Bayern Munich team. I think all the talks in the offseason about a squad overhaul, complete squad overhaul being needed were overblown. And I think these players have what it takes. I think they're showing that they're motivated, they're hungry, they're proving Tuchel and some of the board members wrong. And let's just strap in because I'm excited for the rest of the season. All right, so to cap things off, I did want to talk a little bit about the Bundesliga as a whole, and I got the standings listed out here, so I'm just going to run down the teams and kind of, make a few notes of any sort of surprises, as I've been watching a lot of Bundesliga football so far this season. At the top, as mentioned, we have Bayern Munich. Enough said about them. I won't ramble on and on like I could about Bayern. But in second place, we do have RB Leipzig, and they deserve to be second. They're one of the best teams in the Bundesliga for sure. They knocked out Leverkusen earlier this year. That was Leverkusen's first loss in the Bundesliga in God knows how long, over a year. But they're a very exciting team with a very exciting attack. In third place, we got Frankfurt, and you should probably listen to our latest episode about the Bayern-Frankfurt match because I go into more detail about Frankfurt there. But I really like Frankfurt as a squad. Todd Muller, I think, is a great coach, and Omar Marmoush is the real deal. He is one of the most exciting young players in the world. So I'm excited to see what he does and what Frankfurt does moving forward. In fourth place, we got Freiburg. Bayern took care of them, but they've looked dynamite really the rest of the season so far. Leverkusen sits there in fifth, and they've had a little bit of a slower start to the season than I think a lot of people expected, as most of their invincible team from last year is back. Maybe they've lost a step, but, it's a long season, and I think Leverkusen's going to be right there contending for the title. In sixth place, you have the biggest surprise, in my opinion, with Union Berlin. I think they got a new coach this year, if I'm not mistaken, but, I had them bottom of the table, and, not quite relegation, but definitely bottom half of the table, and here they are in sixth place, just competing with all these top teams. Behind them is Dortmund. Dortmund's an interesting team because I've watched them multiple times this year, and sometimes they look like, they have a new coach and they're stumbling to figure out what to do, and sometimes they look great. So we're going to see what's going to happen with them, but I'm sure they'll be up at the top of the table, competing like always. 8th place, we have Stuttgart, and they did finish second last year, so this is a little bit of a rough spot for them. I think that they're ultimately going to be fine. I don't think they'll finish second again this year, competing in European football now. They lost some of their great players from last year, but I do think that Seb Honis is a great coach, and I think he'll, keep them competitive. Like I said, I don't think they're going to finish quite as high as they did last year. In 9th place, there's Heidenheim. One of the greatest stories in all of football, in my opinion. A 4th division team, small city with hardly any money, raising up through the divisions. Their first Bundesliga season last year, finishing 10th, I believe. And, they just have great fans. They're a great team. Like I said, a story that I don't think you can find anywhere else in the world in football these days. 10th place, we got Mainz. I'm a little bit happy with myself because I did predict them to have a solid season this year. Mainz, I liked how they played Bayern Munich last year. They were bottom of the table, but I liked their aggressive style, and a Bayern loanie's there, so they can be an exciting team. And in 11th place, we do have Werder Bremen, who I talked about because Bayern played them so far this year. They're one of those teams who I like. Them and Wolfsburg, who is sitting at 12th. I think that they will be mid to top half of the table. There's some things to like about these teams, but I don't think they're going to crack that upper echelon. In 13th place, there's Augsburg, and in 14th place, there's Gladbach. These are two teams who I did predict to be kind of at the bottom end of the table. Solid performances at times, but they really, I don't think, have what it takes to compete for an entire season. And then in 15th place, we do have St. Pauli. They were one of the teams that was promoted this year, so I guess it's good to see them not in the bottom two positions. In 16th place, there's Hoffenheim, and that's been the biggest surprise for me this season. On the negative end, I guess. I said Union Berlin as the positive surprise. Hoffenheim would be the negative surprise. They finished 7th last year, I want to say, in the league, and to see them this far down in the table is a surprise for me. I didn't think they were going to repeat the performance they had last year, but I certainly didn't expect them to be this far down in the table, so a lot of season left. Things can change for them. In 17th place, we do have Holstein Kiel, and in 18th place, we have Bochum. Two teams that I thought would kind of be at the bottom of the table. Kiel just got promoted to the Bundesliga. They've had a bit of a rough start. It's hard to compete with some of these powerhouses when you're a team like that. And then, Bochum, who was down there at the end of the year last year, sitting at the bottom of the table again. We'll see if they have what it takes to avoid relegation. So I think that's going to wrap things up for this episode. It's a little bit different, it's a video episode. It's just me. Jim and I aren't having our normal banter and conversation. It's more of a video essay. So if you like this kind of a style, leave me a comment because I go through all those, read them, and really do appreciate all the feedback. As always, like and subscribe. Check out the podcasting platforms as well. Apple, Spotify, we post the regular Always Bayern Chelsea show. Every week we got reactions and previews. And then, check out the Twitter for match news updates, of course. We do all sorts of special things on the YouTube channel as well. We're doing a lot more short videos this year too, so after every match we'll give you a kind of raw live reaction as well. So thanks for hanging in there. Thanks for listening. And as always, Mia San Mia.